we have a belief about ourselves that we're too lazy, or we're, not smart enough, we're too fat, we're too white, we're too black, we're too whatever, but we have, and that is our belief, then the mindset that goes along with, can I lose weight? Can I get healthy? Is going to be much, much less and much less effective, as well as on a cellular level, where I love where
Yes.
you come from, baby. On your cells are going to respond that way as well.
Hey, what's up, guys? It's Dr. V. Welcome back to another episode of the podcast. And today we have a super, super special guest. If you have been to a Tony Robbins event, you have seen him rock the stage full of 10 to 15,000 people, audiences. He is amazing. His name is Joseph McClendon III, and he is an ultimate performance specialist. He's worked with people, CEOs from Fortune 500 companies, celebrities, and athletes. Today, we talk about belief hacking, mindset setting, finding our purpose, and my favorite topic, epigenetics, and we go deep on that. You're going to really learn how to basically take tools in your life and use the things that you hear about today to apply to your life so that you can get to the next level of your performance. Joseph McClendon is frequently asked to give business training, workshops, and seminars for many of the Fortune 500 companies in the US, Europe, and Australia. He's an expert in the coaching of sales professionals, elite athletes, business professionals, CEOs, celebrities in overcoming their inner and outer obstacles that obstruct their results. Ladies and gentlemen, I introduce you to Joseph McClendon III. Joseph McClendon III, thank you so much for joining us. Now, my audience, some of them know you, some of you don't, but you have actually coached Fortune 500 CEOs, some of the top athletes, celebrities. You are really a high performance expert. So what I would like to know, Joseph, is, were you always a high performance expert? Who was Joseph McClendon III as a child? And were there things that didn't work in your life growing up that allowed you to build up the skills to become somebody that's just coaching the elite of the world?
Yes, I've always been magnificent and the absolute best, and I never failed at anything at all. Absolutely not. I wasn't a great student. I was an okay student, but under duress and under stress. My father, who didn't finish his education and had to finish his education as he was raising his family while he was working in the service and the Air Force, the biggest thing for him was education.
Yes.
My mother, on the other hand, was an artist. She was an opera singer. And so her thing was artistry. And so that conflict, trying to, as a child, find myself, I struggled. I was a terrible student, quite honestly, but I did okay, But then what happened, and I had great parents, don't get me wrong. What happened when I was 17 and a half years old, 3 grown men tried to take my life because of the color of my skin. And it completely destroyed me. My self-esteem, my self-worth, all of those issues destroyed me. Now look at it, and I'm intellectualizing it now, but back then I didn't know what was going on. I say to people, and I'm sure you can understand, that I had a level of hatred that most people would feel was justified.
Yeah.
But my hatred was not for those who took advantage of me. My hatred was for myself. It was self-loathing. And because there was a part of me, and it's a whole nother conversation, but there was a part of me that felt like, well, if I wasn't who I am, if I didn't have the skin color that I had, then this wouldn't have happened to me. I felt there was something wrong with me. I spent, the better part of a year and a half in a downward spiral. And unfortunately, I never did drugs or alcohol, but I became homeless. I wound up living in a cardboard box. And what changed my life, what started the upward spiral, was somebody that I didn't know, a kind person, gave me the book Think and Grow Rich. And I read the book and I was desperate, and I did the exercises and my life started to change. And that has been my voyage till now, several voyages to this point right now.
That's amazing. So Think and Grow Rich was the catalyst. I know you studied to be a neuropsychologist helping people with fears and phobias. Is that correct?
That's correct. That's correct. That was my passion. And anybody that tells you that they study psychology because they solely want to help other people, they're lying to you, because I did it because I knew I had some challenges as well. I knew it internally, and even my ego would get in the way, but I realized, physician heal thyself. So I really went to kind of figure myself out.
Yeah, that's my story as well. I grew up, I was a boat refugee from Vietnam. I
Oh,
survived
wow.
dysentery being on a boat for 8 months outside the Philippine refugee camps, another 3 months.
Really?
Yeah, another 3 months in the Philippine refugee camp. And I came to America, and you would think that I would be very grateful to have survived dysentery in my trip. But I felt like, I was this immigrant growing up here,
Yeah.
not enough, not rich enough, not white enough, not American enough, all these not enoughness. And I became this doctor with that energy. And it was chasing these things that are external because of these feelings of not enough that made me take actions that got me to be overweight, diabetic, hypertensive as a doctor.
Right,
And
right.
so it wasn't until I started to do some of the personal work that I reversed those diseases, which is why I'm bringing somebody like you on, Joseph, because a lot of people would say, well, Joseph is not an MD. Well, how does what he has to contribute relate to health? And this is what I tell people. Health is really a state of energy that your conscious decisions and your everyday actions will make up actually your health state, what I call in my new book, the bioenergetic state. And you help
Nice.
people in many different industries, whether it be music, whether it be entertainment or law or coaching and speaking, all these different industries. You would say, well, Joseph's not an expert in all of them, but yet you're able to help them. And that's the same reason you could help somebody in health, because there's so much has to do with the mental and the emotional game.
Absolutely, absolutely, and very well put. And thank you for sharing that with me, because I love to hear about people's voyages, where
Yeah.
they've come from and so on and so forth. Because what I've found is those struggles are what make us strong. It's everybody's struggle that makes us strong.
Yeah.
Some of the people that are the most emotionally and mentally and even physically weak people that I know are people who have averted their struggles,
Yeah.
and have not really gone through struggle. And so, and thank you for that. Yeah, I am not an MD. I have had to defend my doctorate several times because I don't have an Ivy League education. And I tell people, I stand by this. You may not be proud of it, but I'm super proud of it. I started off in junior college. I did several different junior colleges and piecemealed some things together and so on and so forth. But I will put my record for getting results in people up against anybody, any of the haters, if you will. And I say that because you're absolutely right. I always tell people this, that you are 1,000 times better at something than I am. I may not be a great golfer. I've never picked up a baseball bat in a major league game. I may not be what you do, but I am really good at what I do.
Yeah.
And what I do is something that has something to do with every human being. That's why a
Yes.
person like yourself and like myself are valuable to humanity, is because we talk to and we help people heal the entire human being.
Yes.
And so the other thing is, and I see it in you as well, we don't teach theory. We practice what we preach.
Yeah.
I feel as though I can't tell you to do something and claim to be any level of accomplishment at it and teach you if I don't A, do it and practice it myself and gotten results for myself, and
Yeah.
B, haven't done it and practiced it and taught it to other people to get results for them as well.
Yeah.
That's critically important.
Yeah. I talk about what happens to our cells and our health. If we want peak mental, physical, emotional, sexual performance, we want our cells to operate at its best. And when the cells don't operate at its best, they actually dwindle down in function. And then that's when we get chronic disease. I talk about in my book 7 things: sleep, nutrition, movement, thoughts and mindset, relationships, and purpose. And what I would like to tap in with you about, Joseph, are those elements of mindset, emotions, and purpose, because you're the expert there. And I really want the audience to really master these energies. A lot of people sometimes they come to me and they're trying to lose weight, or they're trying to get to the next version of themselves, and they're slightly diabetic, and they say, hey, it runs in my family.
Yeah, yeah.
I've got the genes for it. And we know now through epigenetics that it is really our actions that controls our genetic behavior, and not actually the genes themselves. So how would you're an expert in mindset change. How do you change somebody's thought and mindset against a belief that is not true?
Well, first off, and I approach it just a little bit differently.
Yeah.
I think mindset is a secondary
Yeah.
effect of psychology. They're two different things. A mindset, and certainly they're both important. However, I like to go to the core of everything.
Yeah.
A mindset implies that you have a set of thoughts about a specific thing.
Mm-hmm.
Your weight, and I, by the way, I'm huge into epigenetics, huge. I just did a program that you know of called the Magnificent Life Challenge, where I help people recognize that the beliefs of our ancestors have been handed down through us as African Americans,
Yes.
as people in general. So that's a whole nother thing. We can talk about that a little later. But I believe that the mindsets are fueled by, are foundationed in our psychology. And our psychology is three things. It's the constant thoughts, the constant and repeated thoughts of these three things: our beliefs about ourselves, our beliefs about other people, and our beliefs about the environment or the world around us. Those are the things that tell us whether we give us fuel so we will take action or not take action on the mindset of something.
Yes.
So if we have a belief about ourselves that we're too lazy, or we're not smart enough, we're too fat, we're too white, we're too black, we're too whatever, but we have, and that is our belief, then the mindset that goes along with, can I lose weight? Can I get healthy? Is going to be much, much less and much less effective, as well as on a cellular level, where I love where you come from, baby. On your cells are going to respond that way as well. Yeah. They're not going to rise to the occasion. Mm-hmm. And that's going to set in procrastination, hesitation, fear of failure, fear of success, self-loathing, imposter syndrome. All of those things are going to live in our cells. And so conversely, if we have a strong psychology, a belief about ourselves, a strong belief about ourselves, self-love and all those things, then guess what? Our little cells are going to respond the same way as well, and on up the channel. And so to answer your question with regard to changing people's mindset, I go for the beliefs about their psychology first, and helping them adjust that first. You know as well as I do, awareness is always the first step. So help them get aware of what it is, and then helping them recognize the pattern, and then helping them interrupt or burst open that pattern, and then helping them put in what it is that is going to serve them from that cellular level all the way up, all the way through the body.
That's beautiful. I think you put it right on the money when you mentioned having them be aware that that's the case, because a lot of people are like fish swimming in water, not recognizing they're swimming in water. Being able to actually see the water and say, oh, I'm swimming in water. Can I choose to do something different with that? And that's a big aha moment for a lot of people.
Yeah, my methodology in that is take them out of the water. Put them in the oxygen where they don't have water. And then all of a sudden they realize how important the water is, and how the water has been affecting their life. I'm a little, not a little, I'm quite a bit unorthodox in the way that I do things. When I was practicing in Los Angeles, I would always tell people, listen, if you have a fear of something, we're going to face that fear now. And I don't tell them what it is, but I'll give you an example. If you got a fear of dogs and you come into my office, take a guess what's going to be in my office. Unbeknownst to you, you're going to walk in, there's going to be a dog, and you are going to freak, and I'm going to use that in that moment. But at the end of that hour, you're not only going to be fine with that dog and holding that dog and comforting that dog, I'm going to give you something to do to help perpetuate that growth, that psychological growth in you, so that every cell in your body speaks that, and you crave the thing that you ran away from in the past.
That's amazing. Really letting people know that those thoughts and beliefs on a biological cellular level are just ways that neurons have learned to get fired and wired together before in the past. And a lot of it has to do with, some old past traumas, and they get set in there, and they're an old pattern. And so I love the fact that you're able to use some techniques to actually free yourself from that neural pattern and allow people to see a new way and actually form new tracks. This is the beautiful thing about
Yes.
neuroplasticity, which is how our brains are actually able to mold and change and form new neurons and networks.
Contrary to popular belief, a lot of people
Yeah.
feel like, I got this brain, it's the way that it is, and everything else is recording, but it is malleable, it is changeable from a physiological standpoint and from an energetic standpoint. I look at it like this. I feel we have a couple of electrical impulse machines within inside of us, or
Yes.
apparatus inside of us. A dear friend of mine is Dr. Tennant. Are you familiar with Jerry Tennant?
Yeah.
And his work about the electrical impulses that go through. So people always talk about energy. To me, energy is just electricity. And so those cells that we talk about that are unhealthy, if they will, if you will, they're getting a certain level or certain level of voltage to those cells from our brain through our hearts that are telling them to be the way that they are. And they can't function unless they get the proper electricity to them.
Yep.
And it is really that simple. When somebody is excited about something, the level of electrical impulse that's going through their body into every cell in their body is higher than when they're depressed or they're scared about something. And it's different. It's a different set of voltages. It's going to different places and everything. And those cells respond and our whole body responds.
Yes.
So if we can change how we think, which not if, but as we change how we think, then we change how we feel and we change what we do and what we have.
And exactly. Then those get the results. I love the way you talk about energy, because in my book, Thrive State, I talk about exactly that, the bioenergetic state of our cells. And you bring up something called emotions. And I want people to know out there, emotions are such a powerful energy, and they actually have biochemical changes. When you feel something, they're actually hormones and molecules that change up, and that's energy in your body. So emotions like fear, anger, resentment, hate, all those things raise cortisol, they raise epinephrine, and they lower your immune system, and then increases inflammation, which leads you to get chronic disease. Whereas emotions like love, joy, gratitude, connection actually does the exact opposite. They actually foster growth and healing and put you in your best mental performance. So I ask you, Joseph, there are ways of maybe changing our thoughts will change our emotions, but I know that you teach, and Tony teaches as well, changing our body and our physicality can also a way to short circuit our place into our emotions.
Yeah, absolutely. And that is one of the core elements with regard to what doesn't just create change in a moment. What we're after is we can change in a moment. I don't care how depressed you are. Somebody shows up at the door and they got that Publishers Clearinghouse check for $10 million. Your state is going to change. You're going to be happy. However, we can do that on our own at any given moment, and a great deal of it is just simply moving our body. But and that changes it in the moment. However, us to be unresourceful in the first place, it's just going to keep coming back, and we're going to have to, when it shows up, we're going to have to get ourselves in that state that we do change ourselves. I'm more about these three things. Number one, framing, meaning conversation that we have is another electrical impulse that goes into the head. The conversation that I may have with you and that you may have with yourself produces those electrical impulses. Number two is, the whole concept of anchoring, which is associating a certain emotion to a specific trigger or stimulus. And then thirdly, conditioning so that you do it automatically. The crux of what I do are those three things. And in the end, I want to help people get themselves to the place that they default to an unresourceful psychology. To a resourceful psychology, forgive me. So that when things happen, whatever stimulus shows up, you got two choices: fight or flight, or stay and play. And fight or flight, that's natural, it's normal. People say, well, I want to get rid of fear. No, there are no fearless people. There are people who fear less. And I don't mean the quantity, I mean the quality and the duration of the fear that they experience. So fear shows up, the tiger shows up in the reality, and you go fight or flight. Well, if you fight and you win, the stress is gone. No more cortisol release, okay? If you run away and you win, the stress is gone. No more cortisol release. If you fight and lose, the stress is gone, no more cortisol release. You're dead. If you're running, and the same thing. However, because then, and that's what it's there for. To me, fear is designed to make you aware. That very first step. Awareness is always the first step. And then you get to respond versus react. Fight or flight is a reaction without thought. Respond is with thought. So then you get to respond. And so when something happens, if you go, okay, wait a minute, this means this. Yeah, it's scary for the moment, and you condition yourself to take yourself out of it. Then what happens is you have the choice to do what I say, like stay and play. And then you get the dopamine release and all of those things that cause you to get resourceful, and you have 1,000 more choices to be able to do something. Back to your question, part of that, the very first thing is to change your body. I always tell people, if you're bummed, if you're stressed, if you're fatigued and you're pissed off or whatever, stand up.
Yeah.
At the very least, just stand up and put a smile on your face. Your body cannot resist that type of repetition. And what happens is you create a scotoma. The brain's going, what the hell, why? And in that moment, you're no longer unresourceful. And in that moment, you have the opportunity to put in anything that you want. You do that enough times, it becomes your default.
Yes.
And then when it becomes your default, that becomes your preference, and you do it automatically versus automatically going to that unresourceful state.
Yeah. In Thrive State, I talk about how our energies are all connected. Physical, emotional, spiritual, and mental are all connected. If you were to just smile and do this, your body is wired. When those muscles move, dopamine is released. So you actually feel that whether or not you want to smile or not. In fact, if you stand in a Superman pose, what happens is your testosterone level goes up. So for a man, for a woman, your confidence levels will go up. It'll also decrease cortisol in your body as well. So you definitely hit it again with our movements actually controlling how we feel. And what I also love when you just talked about is having the thought and having the awareness that we are in fight or flight. Because if we can't see it, every day people think that a bad text, your boss getting angry at you, somebody cutting you off in the freeway is actually a saber-toothed tiger. And running away from a saber-toothed tiger is great, and our physiological responses are great if there actually is a real danger. But unfortunately, we're seeing the world like every single moment is danger. And over time, that fear and danger response is what causes chronic disease.
Yeah. If we can back up for a second, first off, this is a really good point that a lot of people, and I love that analogy, the saber-toothed tiger never goes away.
Yeah.
In our lives, whether it is our cell phones, whether it is the screens that we watch, whether it is the media or whatever, the saber-toothed tiger is always there, but it's in the distance.
Yeah.
And it is, we know that it's there. It's called low-level stress, and it produces that low-level cortisol release, and of course that damages and inhibits our cellular performance. And so going back on what we talked about earlier, epigenetics, and if people are listening to this podcast and not seeing me, and if you haven't noticed, I'm African American, and I did a study a while ago, and there's some unbelievable studies. Harvard, Stanford has a study about it as well, and several of them, about the levels of cortisol, which is the stress hormone, which is destructive, which is all those things, and epinephrine and all the things that you said, is as much as 50% higher in a Black man, and 35% higher in a Black woman than our white counterparts. And part of the reason being is that, as I said, epigenetics is part of it is the study of how the beliefs of our ancestors get handed down into the genome of their offspring down through. My ancestors were beaten, were enslaved, were tortured, were lynched, and psychologically hijacked to believe the absolute worst about themselves. And so if you come into this world, and there's an experiment that if it doesn't break your heart when you do this, and I encourage everybody to take a look at this. And by the way, this is not just a racial thing, but this is evidence that the beliefs, negative beliefs, get handed down and then perpetuated through media and things like that. Now, there's an experience, and if this doesn't break your heart when you watch this, then you need to get to the hospital really quick and check and see that you didn't get your organs harvested, because there's something wrong with you. And that is this. There's an experiment called the Black Baby Doll experiment. If you just go on YouTube and look it up, and what they did was they took a white baby doll and a black baby doll, identical except for their color. And they put them on a table and they put these beautiful babies between the ages of 3 and 5 years old, black children first. And they said, point to the baby that's wrong, bad, and ugly. And every single one of those babies pointed to the black baby doll.
Yeah.
Then they said, point to the baby that's good, right, and pretty. And every single one of those children pointed to the white baby dolls,
Yeah.
which means in their brain. Now, the number one fear of human beings is the fear of rejection. It's built into us. It's a survival instinct. And when we feel rejected, cortisol release.
Yeah.
And when we feel less than, cortisol release.
Yes.
And so you got to ask yourself, where are these babies at 3 years old? Where do they get that belief about themselves?
Yeah.
And it is obviously, like I said, epigenetically handed down through the ages, as well as that's what we are presented with in the media and so on and so forth. But the interesting thing is they did the same thing with white children. They asked the white children, which is the baby that's wrong, bad, and ugly, and all the white children pointed to the black baby doll.
Yeah.
You know, and all races, by the way, they did the same thing. So which means society believes that. So if you, as a human being, whether you're black, white, or otherwise, go through life, and underneath somewhere in your brain, which is that command center that's sending out all those electrical impulses, in your brain, you have a feeling of the worst feeling that you can have, which is that is rejection. On a low level, then you've got low levels of the doses of cortisol and epinephrine and all the other concoctions of hormones that are being released at the time. And therefore, you're not going to perform or have the health that you could, should, would, if you believed otherwise. Our job, yours and mine, and anybody else that wants to jump on this train, is to help people break that cycle. Break the connection between those unresourceful thoughts that are in our heads, consciously and unconsciously. Break that flow and turn it up so that it sends what it needs to, or could, would, should, that our cells and our bodies need so that we can perform at our absolute optimum.
That's a beautiful, whoa, I'm getting goosebumps all over my arms, because you're really speaking my language. And for people who, I'm just going to break down epigenetics a little bit for people. You know, DNA is something that are base pairs, A, T, C, G, that are in the same pattern, you know, in your parents and in us. But when things happen to us, when there is a belief or when somebody takes action, our body then adds these little extra molecules on our DNA that changes how our DNA actually act. The ACTG actually never changes, but there's these little tiny marks, and it's a way for basically one generation to pass down the dangers of the next generation.
Exactly.
So here's an example for people to be able to recognize. They took these rats, and what they did was, with these rats, they put the smell of cherries up and they shocked the rat. And every time they put the smells of cherries up, they shocked the rat. And every time, and after the rat got entrained, they put the smell of cherries up, and the rat just shook without the shock. Now, here's the interesting thing. They had this rat have offspring, and the new offspring that actually never got ever exposed to the shock before, given the smell of cherries, they would also shiver in pain as well. So that is what epigenetics is. It's a way for us to learn from mistakes from our ancestors. The only thing is, our ancestors might not have been fully conscious of some of those things. And like you were saying yourself, nor are we, exactly.
Yeah.
And the neat thing is this, because these changes in our DNA are just little tiny tags, if we do the personal work ourselves consciously and be able to relieve ourselves from some of those stories and beliefs, we actually biologically remove some of those tags and actually change the way our DNA is expressed. That's what my book is about. That's pretty amazing stuff, huh?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I say it is the deliberate interruption and removal of those tags that you call them. The deliberate. And that's why I say process is progress. Process is progress, not knowledge. You know, we know this, that knowledge is not power, it's just stored information. But process. And so that's why I'm very, and I know you are as well, very, very heavy on process and giving people the tool to do that themselves. Yes, let's give them experience when they're in our presence, but give them the tools so that they can continue to have that experience consciously and unconsciously, so that it becomes their default.
That's amazing. We talked about beliefs, talk about emotions, and one of the things that are, one of my bioenergetic elements is also the sense of purpose. Now, people with a sense of purpose, that is also a very powerful, not only energy, but a biochemical energy that changes how our cells behave. Having the sense of purpose, you know, helps maintain something called our telomeres, which make our cells live longer, right? So having a sense of purpose also decreases inflammation, increases immunity. It also causes lower risk of having heart attacks and strokes. So purpose is so important.
No doubt.
And, I have my definition that I talk about in my book, but Joseph, I know you talk about that as well. How do you walk people through what their purpose is or how they can tap into their purpose?
I always start with awareness, and I don't assume anything. So I always ask the question, what is your purpose? Even before I have the conversation about how important purpose is.
Yeah.
I ask them what their purpose is. And I'm going to ask you, what percentage of people, if you have 100 people, how many of them do you think know what their purpose is?
I would say 20%. And I would probably say I know more than others only because you and I are in communities that are very aware.
Yeah. And so just that awareness alone and that mindset, if you will, they come with that attitude. But the reality is out there in the streets, only about 13% of people can give you an answer. My purpose is this. And it's generally related to their career, their work, or their family. Okay. And so then I'll have the conversation similarly what you just said by your purpose is it is going to assist in everything that you do. It's one of the pillars of life itself. So, and then I ask, would you like to be, knowing that this is so important, would you like to know what your purpose is?
Yeah.
And because most people go through life believing that the purpose is that thing that I was put there on the planet for, the passion that I'm having, that I was born to do, kind of thing. And that may be very well be. I call that your super purpose. But your real purpose, in my opinion, to get people started so they have a base level so that they can agree and get a psychology of their purpose on this planet, is our purpose is to care for one another.
Yes.
Is to care for one another, to be kind to one another, to help one another. And here's the reason I say that. You know this as well as I did. The most horrible experiment that we studied in college was the failure to thrive syndrome, the Skinner boxes, where they took those children, orphans, put them in boxes. They never touched them, babies. They fed them with gloves and they never saw another human being. They never had any human contact, never had any love, and all of those babies died. It's called failure to thrive. And so because somebody cared enough about you, evidence that you're still here, evidence that we're still alive, breathing, that we made it through our childhood, that we made it through infancy, means that somebody cared enough for you because it was their purpose. When a baby is born, when a woman becomes pregnant, you said that you're expecting a child, you know this, that their hormone levels change both in the man and the woman, you know, the oxytocin and the testosterone, all those things change. And all of those things are designed to cause us to do our purpose, which is to take care of our offspring. Well, if you expand it out to other people as well, it is why charity, why giving and contribution is super high on our musts to do. It is why we feel so good when we help somebody else, is because that is our fundamental purpose. And if you give people that, they go, yeah. And then so let me tell you what you can do about your purpose. Pick up the phone and tell somebody you love them. Go out and donate your time. Go out and care for somebody like that. Then what happens is that cortisol release.
Yes.
All of that stuff starts to step up. And that is a base level purpose for people that everybody can latch on to and go, okay, this is something that I can do. Yeah. And then from there, then the great part about that is those super purposes become more clear.
Yeah.
You know, super purposes. And they're not just our passions, you know, kinds of thing. Because that's what a lot of people get their passion mixed up with their purpose. I love to play bass guitar. It's my passion. I love to do it. That's not my purpose, you know. However, let's just say, fooled myself into believing, well, because I play, if I play it for somebody, I'm helping them feel better. Therefore, that's my purpose.
You know, And I think many artists, that's the case. They've got this art, and when they share their art, people feel connected, people feel pumped, people feel, a sense of emotional shift. So, I talk about in my book what my sense of purpose is. And I think it's encoded in us. We won the lottery by being alive today. And our DNA tells us quite a bit. And when we're kids, we learn, we explore, we participate in activities that make us feel really good. And I think those things are kind of, ingrained in us. Sometimes we just forget that, because as we grow up as adults, certain activities, people say, hey, that's not a living or anything like that. But I feel like if people could do things, if they spend time with things that bring them into states of joy, pleasure, passion, whatever draws up those positive emotional states, that's authentically who you are. So your purpose is you, and it's you sharing yourself, your gifts with the world. And there is that service component.
Yeah, no doubt. Yeah. And it's in all of us, and that's what we're here for.
That's amazing. Joseph, this has been a great, excellent conversation. Thank you so much. I think we could do another episode just on epigenetics alone. I didn't know you could rap on epigenetics, brother.
Don't even get me started. Don't even get me started. That's the tip of the iceberg.
Before I get to my very last question, people, if they've listened to this conversation, they're going to want to get to know you more. How do they find out more about Joseph McClendon III? Where do they follow you?
My main things are, I have three things. My website, which is my name, josephmcclendon.com. My Facebook, which is my name, Joseph McClendon Facebook. And then my Instagram, which is I am Joseph McClendon. And I have resources there that, if you don't mind, I'd like to give somebody. Whenever you're listening to this, it doesn't matter when you're listening to this, it still applies. I created something called the New Year's evolution, because as well as I do, New Year's resolutions don't work. It is something that I've been doing most of my life. My father taught it to me. I just evolved it. And it is a way to make sure that the goals that you set, because you can use it anytime, the goals that you set, that you are more likely to do them versus just set those goals. Because 80% of the New Year's resolutions and goals that people set are the same ones they set last year. And so it's a audio program and a workbook that is totally free. It's my gift to anybody. If you go to my Instagram and click on my profile name, the link will come down. You'll hit it. Please have it as my gift. And,
well, thank you so much for that.
It's a pleasure.
And the very last question I have for you is, living the extraordinary life that you have, looking like you're 27, even though you're 67, let me ask you, what has been your best medicine?
Humor, laughter.
Yes.
I learned a long time ago, and there's reasons behind this, that laughter is the best medicine. Obviously, there are things that I do, the way I eat, the way I move my body, all those things that you said. I say the air we breathe, water we drink, food we eat, thoughts we think, moves we make, words we speak. All of those things contribute, and I have a very specific way that I go about doing those things. Those count, but I wouldn't feel like doing them if I didn't feel good. I would procrastinate on them just as many other people would. But I think, to answer your question, I am the eternal optimist, and the optimist is, to me, finds the humor and the fun in things. And so, if you've been around me at all, you know that I got a big smile on my face 90% of the time, and it's by design, and I've conditioned myself to be that way. So I constantly am looking for the fun, the humor in things. I laugh a lot, and that, to me, because again, laughter promotes breathing, promotes all those things, and it also releases the dopamine, all of those things, as well as the electrical impulses. It is a cybernetic loop that I just enjoy and love.
Ladies and gentlemen, I hope you get your laugh on at some point later today as you listen to this. Joseph McClendon III, thank you for your time, and we'll see you guys next time on the podcast. Thank you for joining me on this episode. If you received value, I truly appreciate it. If you could leave a 5-star review, it will help the show grow. And I'd love to connect with you. You can follow me on Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube at KienVuMD. If you haven't already, pick up a copy of my book, Thrive State, at thrivestatebook.com. And remember, you are your best medicine.